Hello, everyone, and welcome in. Whether you're watching on Stacking the Box, Arrowhead Addict, or BetSided, you are seeing myself and Iain MacMillan live. We apologize for that in some ways, but here we are nonetheless. We have just two NFL games this weekend, but they are beauties. The AFC Championship game, the NFC Championship game. One game, the line hasn't moved. The other one, the game's moved about 9 different ways. So there is plenty to get to from a gambling perspective. And we are here to break it all down for a bit. Iain, how are you doing today? Oh, you're muted.
I'm muted.
There you go. There you go. Well, always good to get off to a strong start. How are you today?
I'm doing all right today, Matt. I'm sure we'll get into it when we start talking about this Chiefs-Bengals game, but few people looked more stupid on Sunday than I did. So I've recovered a little bit from that. I'm doing all right today. I'm looking forward to this weekend.
Well, we did talk about that Bills-Bengals game last week, so I know that's what you're alluding to. We were on very opposite ends of this, and I've been wrong many times in my life. For once, that was not one of them. I thought the Bengals would roll the Bills. They did. I know you were surprised by that. I honestly don't remember. Were there any other games you got wrong last week in terms of just straight up, or was it all just on the lines?
I actually, even throughout the playoffs, I'm 9-1 against the spread with my 10 spread picks. But I think the one I was the most confident in all throughout the playoffs was the Bills to beat the Bengals last week. And it wasn't just this show. I went on several shows last week saying that the Bengals actually aren't a good football team and that the Bills are going to steamroll them. So people don't remember the picks that you get right generally. They generally remember the ones that you're dead wrong about. So my mentions were a fun time on Sunday.
These things happen.
Deservedly so. I deserve it. If I'm going to go on a limb and say a team's going to get steamrolled and then they look like absolute world beaters, I deserve it. That's all part of it.
Have you learned your lesson with the Bengals?
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get in that game second. We're going to go in order of the games of the day. And the NFC game is going to kick off first at Lincoln Financial Field, 3 Eastern, the Eagles, the 49ers. I think most would say the two best teams in the NFC by a pretty good margin, especially by the latter half of the season. The Eagles come in at 13-4. The Eagles coming in at 14-3. The Niners coming in at 13-4. Niners off of that win over Dallas, kind of a hard-fought game, defensive battle. They got the job done. The Eagles treated the Giants like a speed bump, 38-7. And so here we sit. That line, correct me if I'm wrong. When I first saw it on Sunday night, it was 2.5 for Philadelphia. And it has not moved at all in any way, shape, or form.
It did originally open at -1 for the Eagles because that's actually what I bet on that. But it moved within like 30 minutes. It moved up to 2.5. Okay. So it did move very, very, very quickly. But there was a brief moment in time it was -1.
Gotcha. And it has sat there. It has not moved. I'm looking at it right now. Still Eagles 2.5. Totals 46.5. Do you think that's the right line? Do you think it's the right total? Where do you sit on just where the odds makers have put it?
Yeah, I actually think the current line where it's at now is correct. That's why when it first came out, the very first opening line was -1, and I jumped on the Eagles because I set the line at 2.5. I think 2.5 is probably the right number. I think the Eagles are the team to bet on in this game. It might be with the spread being where it's set at right now, which I think is the right number. You might just even want to go money line and just maybe bet a little bit more if you want to bet on the Eagles since they're favorites and just forget about the spread. Because I do think it's going to be an extremely close game. But everyone talks about how good the 49ers defense is. I don't think the Eagles defense gets enough credit for being as good as they are. The best pass rush in the NFL this year, sack percentage over 11%. Yes. One of the best secondaries, if not the best secondary. There is a weakness that the Eagles defense has had, though, and that's their ability to stop the run. Right outside the bottom 10, if you want to look at advanced analytics like DVOA and run defense, I think they were 24th in opponent yards per carry, somewhere around there. So if there is a weakness, it's their ability to stop the run. But other than that, they're top 1, top 2, top 3 defenses in the NFL.
I agree. Look, I went through and I looked because I always look in these games when I think they're really close. I think this game is very close. What are the margins? Which team wins on the margins? The Eagles are better in red zone offense, red zone defense, third down offense, third down defense in San Francisco. The other thing in this game that would scare me if I'm the Niners, The one thing about San Francisco's defense you can do against them, you can throw the ball outside. They do not have great corners. What can Philly do? They can protect and they can throw outside. I think they can get chunk plays in this game. Look, the Niners shot here, and you kind of alluded to it, or you did allude to it. Got to run the ball. Got to run the ball with Mitchell and McCaffrey. Both guys, by the way, not practicing currently, although McCaffrey just said that there's zero chance he misses this game. I'm sure he'll play. But are they healthy? We don't know. I mean, Hurts has been on the record saying he doesn't feel all that hot, but he is going to be out there and he's going to play. He played very well against the Giants for whatever that's worth to you. I think the Niners have a lot fewer pats to win this game than the Eagles do. I think the Eagles can win this in a variety of ways. And the Niners, it's kind of like, look, you've got to run the ball. You've got to stay on schedule. Defensively, you're going to have to get to Hurts. You've got to get through what I think is the best offensive line, if maybe at the worst top 3 in the league. You're asking a lot here of Purdy to go across the country. I know everybody's like, well, he's undefeated. He's played one good defense since he's been a starter. It was Dallas. They scored 19 points, and 3 of those points came off a turnover at the 20-yard line. Like, it wasn't like they exactly lit Dallas up.
Right.
If Prescott's even halfway decent, then Dallas wins that game. So, look, I don't think it's a blowout, but I think you're asking a lot of San Francisco to go in there and win that football game.
Yeah, I will say another point that kind of leans the Eagles here. The referee for the game, I kind of dug into this yesterday. I wrote up an article on FanSided about it. The referee for this game, John, is it Hussey? John Hussey. The home team throughout his career, every single year actually dating back to 2016. So that is now 7 straight seasons, including this year. The home team has won at a higher win percentage compared to the league average in John Hussey refereed games. He refereed one Eagles game this year too, and it was a game that they beat the Cowboys 26-17. They called 10 penalties against the Cowboys for 72 yards, 2 penalties against the Eagles for 10 yards. If you want to start digging into referee handicapping as well, which might be getting a little bit nitty gritty, but I think the advantage leans towards the Eagles being at home as well. So that's another kind of, point towards the Eagles if you're trying to figure out who to bet on as well. I think this is their game to lose. I'm going to be at this game as well. I thought about going to the game last weekend, but then it dawned on me it might end up being a blowout. And if they win, they host the NFC Championship. And I was smart because it was a blowout against the Giants. So I'm going to the NFC Championship game. I'm excited to be there. And of course, maybe that plays a little bit into why I'm betting the Eagles, because I have no desire to go to Lincoln Financial Field and root for the 49ers. I value my life a little bit too much.
So wear that Falcons helmet behind you. No one's going to care. No one's going to give one iota. You'd be like, I'm a Falcons fan. People might buy you drinks.
That's true.
I think that, I get the sympathy vote there. No, I expect it to be a fun game, a good game. Yes. I'll put it this way. I would not be surprised if the 49ers won. I wouldn't be like blown away by that. The Niners are really good. Like, there's a world here where the Niners do just win the game. They run the ball well. Purdy doesn't turn the ball over. Defensively, they get some pressure. The one thing with the Eagles this whole year, and it's not going to factor in, I don't believe, this week either. I don't know if you've looked at this. The Eagles have not played one good quarterback the entire season. It's got to be a record. The best quarterbacks they faced all year. Oh, believe me, I've checked this like 5 times over. Here are the absolute best quarterbacks they've seen this season. Jared Goff in week 1. Kirk Cousins on a Monday night game, so that doesn't even count. Okay. They faced Trevor Lawrence in week 5, I believe it was, but in a complete downpour in Philadelphia, where nobody could hold on to the ball, turned it over like 5 times. They played Dak Prescott in week 16, I believe it was, when Gardner Minshew was going for them, and Dallas scored like 40 points in that game. And they played Aaron Rodgers, and he played for half the game, and Green Bay was scoring at will, and then he went out. And also the Packers gave up almost 400 yards rushing, which was not helping their cause. Other than that, it has been a who's who of complete garbage. Cooper Rush, Daniel Jones, Davis Webb, Taylor Heineke, Carson Wentz, Kenny Pickett, Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan, Davis Mills, Andy Dalton, Kyler Murray, Justin Fields. Not exactly like, wow, a great year. Which I only bring that up for this reason. I don't think Brock Purdy's breaking that streak. But when they get to the Super Bowl, no matter who they play, that is the one thing I find very interesting. The Eagles defensively are very, very talented. They also play a very simplistic zone defense that they pretty much will just sit in over and over and over and over and over. And it hasn't mattered at all this year because none of these quarterbacks are any damn good and can't attack it. I wonder against the Chiefs or the Bengals, does it make a difference? Does it matter? Like, I mean, it'll make some difference, but like how much of a difference, I don't know. That is the only question I have about Philadelphia because I love the roster, love the coach. I mean, I'm part of the PFWA. I voted for Howie Roseman as executive of the year. I think they're awesome. That's my only question in that Super Bowl should they get there. Is if they face one of those two quarterbacks, of course they'll face one of them. What does that look like? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that question is.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that the AFC as a whole, especially when it comes to quarterbacks, is a much stronger conference than the NFC. So no matter who comes out of the NFC, even if it's the 49ers played the Chiefs this year and got destroyed, didn't they?
The Niners played the Chiefs in San Francisco, gave up 44 points, and the Chiefs had 2 turnovers and missed a field goal.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So that is something to keep in mind for the Super Bowl. I will say, though, I think this is clearly the best 2 NFC teams. I think all year long, from start to finish, I think it was the Eagles and the 49ers and then a gap and then everyone else. So, I'm excited for this game. I think it's the correct 2 teams playing for the NFC Championship.
Have you, but perchance, have you taken a look at the look-ahead lines for the Super Bowl?
I have. They're all the same, pretty much.
The Bengals are slight underdogs, and the Chiefs are slight favorites, at least from what I've seen. I know every book obviously is different.
Like even the spreads are all like they're all 1-point spreads.
They're
like
all
they're
basically
all coin flips.
Yes. At one point, the Chiefs I saw were like a point dog to the Eagles. Now they're a point favored. They're like a point and a half over the Niners, and it's just inverse that for Cincinnati. I can't remember 4 teams at the end that are this close, where it's like any of them could win. I know you disagree with me. We'll get to that.
If it was the Bills, I would agree. Unfortunately, even though last week it didn't look that way, I think the Bengals are the odd duck here.
Okay. I think the 4 best teams in football are here. I really do. In fact, briefly here, before we get into the Chiefs and the Bengals, I mean, I know you believe in the Bills. Like, just from a football standpoint, I know this isn't really a gambling thing, but like a football thing, like, if you're them, would you change a lot, or would you stay the course and stay with this group and stay with? Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying blow the thing up and go 6-11 next year, but like, would you be aggressive in altering this roster, or would you stay the course and you just think that game was enough?
I think largely stay the course, especially. I mean, maybe make some changes with the coaches, if anything. I thought the coaching is what killed them last week against the Bengals. Why did they run so much zone coverage in snow? You can't
period.
Zone coverage, like in order to succeed at zone coverage, you have to the defenders need to be able to stick their foot in the ground and accelerate quickly. You can't do that when you're playing on a slippery surface caused by snow. And Joe Burrow, was that you that tweeted that Joe Burrow's stats against zone coverage?
I tweeted out against the Chiefs, who he utterly destroyed in zone coverage in week 13.
Yeah. So the Bills had a lot of questionable coaching decisions in that game last week. They definitely need a number 2 receiver. They don't have a number 2 receiver, which hurt them last week, and maybe some coaching changes. But other than that, I mean, listen, there's, and I've talked about this before. There's different ways you can evaluate teams. You can just watch film. You can, watch what you're just watching on game day. You can look at stats. The way I evaluate teams is I look at stats. Sometimes it blows up my face and it makes me look stupid like it did last week. But that's kind of what I've decided I'm married to are the numbers. And the numbers show me the Bills are still a top 3, top 4 team in the NFL. They just didn't bring it when they had to. Which is a lot of people I saw on social media are calling the Bills frauds because of another playoff loss. I don't think fraud is the right term. I think we can now start to call them chokers. They don't show up in big games several years in a row.
Listen, I think that's probably a fair point at this juncture. The Bengals beat them in a way that 27-10 didn't even do it justice. Like, the Bengals could have beaten them by 30 points in that game. 2020, the Bills were up 9-0 in the AFC Championship game at Arrowhead and then gave up 38 of the next 44 points. Then they went back to Arrowhead and they played a great game, and they were 13 seconds away from hosting the AFC Championship game and completely pissed down their leg. And then this happened. I'm with you. I don't know that you're like all of a sudden going to just go, oh my God, everything's got to change. Every single thing's got to change. But something's got to change. I mean, whether it's the way you coach your team, whether it's a personnel group or two, whatever it is, something's got to give. But
I also think this just happens in the design of the NFL playoffs where it's one game. Not to say it obviously can't do it, but let's just say by theory, there's no such thing as injuries and players are fresh every single game. If it was a best of 7 series,
sure.
Would have the Bills have won a Super Bowl by now? Are they just not showing up and just
right? And if I won the lottery, I'd own a yacht, but I didn't,
right.
And I don't.
Right?
So,
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, there's a more crude analogy there as well. But I mean, it's just this what it is. Like, I hear you, but this ain't basketball. Like, you can't lose game 1 in the NFL. Game 1 is game 7.
Right.
I think what struck me was just how outclassed they were in that game. I mean, they were just blown out of the building. That doesn't mean that they can't come back next year and win the Super Bowl, but they, in that game, were blown out. Let's get to the AFC title game, which has been the line movement of the century in both directions at this point. You had the Chiefs open -3. The line then moved pretty much via public money all the way to Cincinnati -2.5. Now, after watching Mahomes be able to walk up to a podium, it has swung all the way back to Kansas City -1. What do you make of this? I mean, you don't see a line move like that very often.
No.
What do you make of all the movement? And now, by the way, the total when we came on the show to start was a 47.5. And literally, as I was just looking at it, it just blinked and went to 48.
Probably as a result of Mahomes as well. But yeah, it's pretty rare to see this kind of crazy line movement, but it is just because of Mahomes' ankle. So Bengals were 2.5-point favorites. And was it yesterday or the day before Mahomes had the press conference? He wasn't wearing a boot. He didn't limp when he came off the podium, and then he jogged or something at practice.
Yes.
Then that caused the line to go down to Bengals -1. And then since overnight, it's now gone in favor of the Chiefs. I'm actually seeing the Chiefs 1.5-point favorites here at some point too. So it's moving even more. So it's nothing else other than Mahomes' ankle. It's people trying to predict what the status of his ankle is going to be on game day. That's all it is.
Agreed. Do you think that warrants this amount of line movement? I mean, obviously, I know he's Mahomes, he's a great player, but do you think that the line should be swinging this much just because of his right ankle? Do you think that's enough to justifiably make this line move? Or do you think it's just a lot of public money panicking one way or the other?
No, I think it's a lot of people panicking. No, because actually when the line opened at Chiefs -1, I actually betted at that because I thought that number, it wouldn't get worse than that. I thought that was public perception of what his ankle, if his ankle's bad, then the Chiefs are 1-point favorites. Because I talked to people who work in sports books and who set odds, and they say, if they told me, and this was before, to be fair, before the divisional round, that if everyone's healthy, the Chiefs would be 4.5, 5.5-point favorites. So when I saw Chiefs -1, I thought it wouldn't get any lower. I thought it was that low because of the ankle injury. So I was surprised to see it even shift all the way to the Bengals being favorites. That to me tells me that people thought he might not play at all.
Gotcha. Okay. Are you annoyed you didn't take it at +2.5?
I mean, in an ideal world, I wish I would have. I wish I could have just taken Chiefs money line at that, but that's kind of the betting early lines and opening lines in the NFL. That's it's a gamble inside the gamble. It worked for me in the Eagles game. I predicted the line movement correctly in that game. Did not predict it correctly in the Chiefs game, but that's like I said, that's the gamble inside the gamble.
That's true. All right. You are notorious for not believing in the Bengals.
Yes.
Obviously, you just finished saying you bet on the Chiefs.
Yes.
Why are you betting on the Bengals why are you betting on the Chiefs in a game where Mahomes is at least potentially gimpy, and they have lost 3 games in a row to the Bengals, including in week 13 where they were beaten 27-24 at Cincinnati?
Two reasons line up for me betting on the Chiefs. Number one, I've said it earlier in the show. I rely on the stats. I die on the hill. Sometimes the numbers lead me astray and it costs me. But I mean, when I look at the numbers, and I understand there's more to football than just numbers, but numbers are the only thing that we can actually hold. We don't know what the actual game plan of these teams are. We're not in team meetings day in and day out. We don't know what their strategies are heading into these matchups. We don't know how they're psychologically feeling. We don't know what the locker room's like. So the only thing I can actually hold on to and measure is stats. And when I see things like the Chiefs lead the NFL in yards per play, 6.1 yards per play, the Bengals are 10th, 5.7 yards per play. You look at opponent yards per play, Chiefs have the advantage, 9th to 16th. Like, no matter, I could just keep listing these, but no matter what stat you look at, outside of red zone defense, which is the Chiefs' biggest weakness, we talked about that last week, and turnover margin, outside of those two, and turnover margin is only a slight advantage in the Bengals' favor. The Chiefs have the advantage in every single area. Now they're at home at Arrowhead and only a 1-point favorite. Even if Mahomes' ankle isn't 100%, even if it's 80%, I still take that line. And the other thing that I like to do when I'm betting is I like to go against the public narrative. And the public narrative is that, what do they call it? Burrowhead Stadium or Joehead Stadium?
Yes,
what are they calling it?
It's been renamed Burrowhead for this weekend.
Burrowhead. Yeah, sure. Joe Burrow is 3-0, which, first of all, 3-0, 3-game sample size, an extremely small sample size that I don't really put too much value behind. Number two, all these games were close. Was it the regular season matchup this year where the Chiefs were about to score to go up 2 scores and Kelsey fumbled close to the goal line? The
he fumbled at midfield. But yes.
Oh, was it? Okay, midfield.
They had the ball in the fourth quarter, and if they'd scored, they were marching downfield.
Yeah, Kelsey doesn't turn the ball over. I mean, Chiefs probably win that game, and then all of a sudden they're 1-2 with winning the most recent one, and this Burrowhead Stadium is not even a thing. So 3 games, the whole world seems to just love the Bengals, love Joe Burrow in this spot, and when the whole world loves it, I like to zig when everyone else is zagging. So the stats tell me Chiefs. Going against the public narrative tells me Chiefs. So I'm a big Chiefs guy this weekend.
Okay. So you have drawn the ire of Chiefs fans throughout the course of the year, but now in the biggest moment of the year,
yes,
you're riding with them to avenge multiple defeats here at the hands of the Cincinnati Bengals. I have mostly ridden on the white horse this year for Chiefs fans and said I believe in them. I believed in their defense at the beginning of the year. I believed in this team all year long. While I still believe in the team, I am taking the Bengals to win this game.
How the tables have turned.
That's right. Now, as the office would say, how the turntables. Okay. Here's my thoughts. If both teams play their best game, I think the Chiefs are the better team, and I think they will win the game. However, the Chiefs, when they play the Bengals, do not play their best games. They have turned the ball over. They have taken a million penalties. They have not gotten pressure on Burrow unless they blitz. They have had bizarre game plans. Here's a couple of crazy statistics that are actually true. Last year in the playoffs, the Titans sacked Burrow.
I'm just laughing at the chat. The chat
is destroyed. I understand. Hear me out. The Titans sacked Burrow 9 times last year in the divisional round. The Chiefs sacked him 1 time. This year, Chiefs led the AFC in sacks, only second in the NFL to Philly, 55 sacks. They sacked Burrow 1 time. Couldn't get near him. Now, I understand there are 60% backups in for Cincinnati up front. The Chiefs should be able to get to him. I am not arguing that. But I am a big believer, and if you guys who have been on this podcast, you know this because I say this all the time. You got to show me sometimes. It's the same thing I always say about the Chargers. Like, every time they play the Chiefs, people are like, I'll tell you what, I'm taking the Chargers. It's like, yeah, fuck that. Call me when the Chargers win 1 game that ever matters. And they never do. Okay? Ever. The Chiefs have won 1 million big games. They have struggled against this team. I think if the Chiefs do not turn the ball over and they win up front, they win this football game. But that has been a brutal thing for them against Cincinnati. Out of respect for the fact that the Bengals have owned them for the better part of 2 years, I'm going to take the Bengals in the game. I think the Chiefs are the better team, but they haven't played like it against them. Do you know that in these 3 matchups, the Bengals have only combined taken 2 penalties that have resulted in a first down for the Chiefs. The Chiefs have taken 10 the other way. Also, that does not include a game-ending kickoff return for a touchdown. Chiefs would have been up by 20 points at halftime in the first of these three matchups. Byron Pringle runs the thing back 100 yards. Zane Anderson, who's in another zip code on the field, he's not even near Byron Pringle, just decides to tackle some guy, so it gets called back on a hold. The Chiefs have also turned the ball over 3 times in those games. The Bengals have turned the ball over once. The Chiefs have beaten themselves over and over and over and over and over. If they don't beat themselves, they will win this football game. But I have to see them do it. So I am to the point now, if this was the other way, I'd be sitting here saying the Bengals never beat them. I think it's a coin flip of a game. I'm taking the team that never loses in these games. I got to be fair. I have to see the Chiefs actually go out and beat them. That is where I sit on this. And Chiefs fans, you know how I want this game to go. But I'm being honest. That's why, hopefully it's why you listen. I'm being honest. I think if they play their best, they win. But they haven't done that against Cincinnati.
Unbelievable. The AFC Championship, and you're going against your own team.
These things happen. Hey, look, the last time I picked against them in a playoff game, most maybe in here feel better. I picked against them the first time Mahomes was in a playoff game against the Colts because I said the same thing. The Chiefs blow every playoff game they play in. They choke like dogs in every single one of them. And I'll never forget watching that game. They got up 17-0 right away. They were killing Indianapolis. And I remember thinking like, wow, okay, this is nice, but like, I've been here before. I have seen this happen. I have seen this happen with this football team. They go to punt the ball. It gets blocked and run back for a touchdown by Indianapolis. And everybody, if you ever want to get a good laugh, go watch that play and listen to the crowd at Arrowhead. There's a collective like, oh God, oh my God, again. Mahomes takes the ball and just rolls right down the field and jams it in the end zone. And I remember thinking like, it's finally different. Because that never would have happened with any other teams. It would have fallen apart. They would have given up 30 points. Like, Chiefs just killed them from there on out. That was the last time I picked against them in a playoff game. I need to see them do it, but I think they're talented. Oh, I could do without Willie Gay talking crap right now. I could live without. What scares you about the Bengals offense? Willie Gay says, quote, nothing. I got to tell you, I watched the film week 13. It should be his and Nick Bolton's zone coverage in that game. That ought to scare him. I love Willie Gay, but come on, man. Nothing? Did you watch that game?
I agree with him.
Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, nothing, huh? Just
the Chiefs are the better team. You got to ride. Just you can't overthink this. The Chiefs are the better team.
Okay. All right.
But also,
I agree with you, but I'm terrified.
If there is such thing as an X factor, Joe Burrow has it because he plays his best football when the lights are the brightest.
Yes, he does.
He brings it.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Listen, Joe Burrow, he has that ability to make throws into tight little windows. You go, how the hell did he get that in there? He doesn't have a big arm, but he does. The one thing I will say in this game I do think plays in Kansas City's advantage is I'm not always a big home field guy. Like, I think it can matter in certain spots. Maybe if you're a cold weather team and it's late in the year and you get a warm weather team in there, I think sometimes that can matter. Teams aren't used to it. This is one game because, I can't remember a game. I can't remember a game that is more emotional for them. A lot of times fans build up the rivalry. It feels like there's a deep-seated hatred between these two teams at this point. I think it will be a very emotional crowd, especially with Mahomes and his ankle and all that stuff. I do think it matters at the games at Arrowhead Stadium. Now, again, I'm picking Cincinnati, so I don't think it matters enough. But I do think that if the Chiefs get up in the game and Mahomes looks good early, there could be a bit of a snowball effect with the crowd. But Burrow's a great quarterback, man. He's awesome. Chase is a top 5 receiver in the league. Higgins is the best number 2 in football. They bring a lot to the table, and they are really well coached. The Bengals are really well coached. So I honestly think it's going to be a great game. I do. I think no matter who wins, I think it's going to be excellent. I could see the NFC game being a 2-score game. I don't think the AFC title game is going to be. I'd be shocked if one of these teams blew the other one out.
I agree. I'll say 2 last things in support of the Chiefs bet here. The Bengals, and you brought up the home field advantage in this game. The Bengals have significantly been worse on the road this season. Even just look at average scoring margin, plus 10.3 at home, plus 3.8 on the road. Let's also not forget, I know they just came off an extremely impressive win over the Bills. The Bengals were outplayed by the Baltimore Ravens in the wild card round. Tyler Huntley doesn't fumble that ball and it gets returned for a touchdown by Sam Hubbard. The Ravens win that game, and we're not even having this conversation. So, yeah, they looked impressive last week against the Bills, but this team isn't invincible either.
No, listen, I am not. I will say this. My feelings on this game have nothing to do with the Bengals beating the Bills. To me,
right,
I've learned in sports and in football, especially in football, every game is unto itself. Every game.
Right.
People get way too into this. Like for an example, oh my God, look at how the Eagles beat the Giants. It's like, okay, but they're not playing the Giants this weekend. Now I'm picking the Eagles, but like my point is, that has nothing to do with San Francisco.
Right.
I mean, it does. That stuff to me, football is very matchup centric. You know, I thought Baltimore was going to give the Bengals trouble because they can pound the football. I'll tell you right now, if the Chiefs win this game, Isaiah Pacheco is going to be a big reason why. Because they're just going to pound it and pound it and pound it. Like, that's how they're going to win if they're going to win this football game. If Mahomes has to throw for more than 300 yards, they're losing. Like, they need to be able to run the ball. Now, look, if they run the ball like crazy and he throws for 300 yards, okay, fine. But it's, to me, that was always going to be a hard matchup. The Bills losing to the Bengals the way they did, look, Josh Allen looked like a deer in the headlights in that game. Patrick Mahomes is not going to look like that. To me, like, some of this stuff, the Chiefs got destroyed playing soft zone, just like the Bills did. The Chiefs are not going to do that again. One thing about Spagnuolo, they will change. They will play a different coverage. Like, I don't take anything away from that other than, hey, hell of a game by Cincinnati. But to me, just like if the Chiefs had beaten Jacksonville 41-17, like I think if Mahomes maybe was healthy, they would have. Like, you know what? I wouldn't really care because they're not playing Jacksonville this week. They're playing the Bengals. So I think sometimes football, people get way too into like what happened the week prior.
Right.
And what it's irrelevant because it didn't happen against these two teams. And football is such a stylish, you know, a
styles make fights.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. Thank you.
Correct.
All right. So you are on the Eagles and the Chiefs to be in Super Bowl 57.
Yes. Yeah. The Kelsey brothers matchup, the Kelsey Bowl.
Oh, listen, there'd be no shortage of storylines if those two teams get into the Super Bowl.
I think that's the most exciting matchup too. I think that'd be the most fun.
It probably is. Oh, listen. I don't want to hear one Chiefs fan, if the Chiefs lose this game, talking about anything being rigged. Because at the NFL, if there's one team they want in there, it's them. Because you either get a Super Bowl rematch of a couple years ago with the Niners, or you get the Kelsey Bowl and Andy Reid against Philly. And I mean, oh my God. Yeah,
look, I didn't even think about that.
You will have all kinds of story. Oh my God. Not to mention, you know, look, the Chiefs aren't a big market, but they're a big market in terms of a TV draw because everyone wants to see them because of Mahomes and all the rest. So, like, if there's any argument, it's just the NFL would rather see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl than the Bengals. But that being said, I am also taking the Eagles. And despite my feeling that the Chiefs are the better team when they play 100%, I'm going with Cincinnati. The Chiefs have to prove they can beat them. The Chiefs have been their little brother for 2 years. So they got to find a way to beat them. All right.
Really, one really last quick question.
Hit it.
Who's better, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes?
Oh, stop it. Okay, I'll say this. First of all, Mahomes is the answer. I wrote about this. Okay, like I wrote on FanSided today, actually this morning, about the difference between the resumes and like you know how this game's been built up as this big legacy game. And I'll drop the link into the chat for phenomenal producer, Richard. If Richard wouldn't mind dropping that in there, and everybody can read it if they'd like. But I wrote about how, like, this game, it's a legacy game for Burrow. It's not for Mahomes. Mahomes is about to be a 2-time MVP. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won 1. He's a Super Bowl MVP. He started for 5 seasons. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first-team All-Pro, 1-time second-team All-Pro. He's thrown for 35 touchdown passes 4 times. He's 27 years old. The only guys to ever do it more than him are Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, 6 times each. He's thrown for 50 touchdown passes. He's twice thrown for 5,000 yards. Like, Mahomes legitimately, if he retired tonight, would walk into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, you think he's done enough already?
Yes.
All
yes.
right.
I'll give you here. Here's a good nugget, because this is why FanSided pays me the decent bucks. Okay, this is why. I researched this last night. Here, we'll have some fun with this one. Do you fancy yourself somewhat of a historian on the NFL, or not so much?
Past 20 years. I mean, more than the average person, but I mean.
Okay, I don't want to put you in a bad spot. Okay, fair enough. Not including Mahomes, because technically he has not won a second MVP yet. Yes. There are 6 quarterbacks in NFL history, Super Bowl era, let's say, okay, because they're all in Super Bowl era, who have won a Super Bowl, at least one, a Super Bowl MVP, and at minimum 2 MVP awards in the regular season. How many of the 6 can you name?
I'm going to go Steve Young.
Yes.
Joe Montana.
Yes.
Peyton Manning.
Yep.
Tom Brady.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
Kurt Warner.
Yes.
I have your tweet right in front of me.
Of course you do. I was going to say, you're reading. Yeah. Listen.
I will say a quick comment. I read that list actually literally right before we went live. It's literally on my screen here. All of those made sense. I was shocked Kurt Warner won 2 MVPs.
99 and 2001. And Falk won the one in between.
I think I could have guessed all of those. I would never have guessed Kurt Warner.
Yeah. So Mahomes is about to be number 7. And you got 4 guys who are in the Hall of Fame, and Rodgers and Brady are going into the first ballot. So, yes, I honest to God, I really think that Mahomes, yes, he'll walk into the Hall of Fame. Joe Burrow, in comparison, who is great, he's been to 1 Pro Bowl, and he's been to 1 Super Bowl, and he lost it. That is the amount of his resume at this point. Historically speaking, like if you look back in 30 years, that's his resume. This game is far more important for Joe Burrow historically. If the Chiefs lose this game, like, you get all these people who are like, he'd be 2-3 in the AFC title game. Look, Brady lost the AFC title games. He lost Super Bowls. Elway lost Super Bowls. Nobody gives a shit. What did you win? Like, that's what matters, right? Like, people care about that. In the end of all this, I do think for Bengals fans, you do have to look at Burrow. Look, Burrow's amazing. I think he's the second best quarterback in the league. I really do. I don't think it's arguable. But obviously, from history's perspective, a ring would elevate him into that pantheon that you get to when you're a great quarterback and you win, right? So I think it's much more important for him. Listen, don't get me wrong. I think for Mahomes, it's resume padding. It's getting back to another Super Bowl. It's winning another Super Bowl. It's all that stuff, right? That all matters. But I don't think, Peyton Manning lost a lot in the playoffs. I don't see a lot of people like, oh God, Manning's trash. Like, they lost that one AFC title game. Nobody, like, Burrow, there's a lot more on the line for it this Sunday than there was for Mahomes, in my opinion. Maybe others would disagree. That's how I see it.
I just wanted on record, I do agree Mahomes is a better quarterback. I just wanted to throw up a little layup for you so you could get back in the good graces of the Chiefs fans in the chat. Because
I appreciate it. I'm going to need it, because wait till I go on at 4. We have 1,000 people on the Arrowhead Addict podcast, and I say that. I'm going to have people are going to be sending weird things in the mail to me. But listen, pay me to be honest.
Yep.
It is what it is. They've got to prove that they can beat the Bengals. Sorry. If I'm watching a boxing match and I'm like, listen, I think that Muhammad Ali is a better fighter than Joe Frazier, but Joe Frazier kicks his ass 3 times in a row. At some point, I'm like, well, Muhammad Ali's got to beat Joe Frazier. Like, That's the way it is. That's where I am with this. All right. This has been How to Bet the AFC and NFC championship games. Go with Ian, because I don't want to hear it anymore. All right? Go with it. For Iain MacMillan, I'm Matt Verderame. I'll be back at 4 o'clock Central, 5 Eastern, with Patrick Allen on the Arrowhead Addict podcast to break down the AFC Championship game. That will be on the Arrowhead Addict channel. For the both of us and for the Stacking the Box podcast, BetSided and Arrowhead Addict, I'm Matt Verderame. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you again real soon.